Welcome to the Live Big podcast, where real estate expert Nick Paynes shows you that everyone can build wealth through real estate investing. Nick and his featured guests will give you the tools, resources, and expert information you need to leverage real estate into a wealth-building strategy, so you can stop worrying about your 9-to-5 and start to live big. Here's Nick with today's episode.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Live Big podcast. Today's episode, we are going to talk about how to acquire your first rental property or your first rental properties. For today's guest, I want to welcome a very good friend of mine, Zach Sanders. Zach.
Hey, guys.
Thanks for being with us today.
Appreciate you having me.
And the reason I wanted Zach to come in today is because he's actually he's just a normal guy like anybody else that wants to invest in real estate. And he just really did he's done house hacking before, but he really just did his first kind of house hack by himself with his wife. And so we're going to talk a little bit about it. It was really just in the last couple months here. So it's somebody that has done this recently and will have a kind of a fresh perspective. So it's been a little while since I started with it. So anyway, we'll talk about some things today that we've already covered in the first few podcasts, but we're also going to talk about some things that we'll cover in future podcasts. So he's not a professional investor. He's just like anybody that might be out there listening today, and I wanted his perspective. So anyway, welcome. Thanks again for being here.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. And so let's start a little bit with, tell me about your first ever property, when you bought it, and just kind of tell me the logistics around that.
So my first property was with my business partner, which was my brother at the time. We were living at my parents', and back in 2018, my brother and I, we started, we wanted to move out, but we did not want to rent. So we started saving up some money, and we went to a couple of lenders and couldn't get approved for what houses were selling for. We wanted to get into a house, and we could not get approved for the amount. And we started looking, and we actually found a lender that did a first-time home buyer with 3% down. And they gave us, the other portion of it or whatever, and we got approved for about $350. So that was kind of the beginning of us looking. We found a house that needed some work. We were looking all over the place. We were putting in offers, and it was just kind of a nightmare at that time because people were offering $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 over asking for certain houses. And we didn't have that amount to come over. So we found a house that was it was rough. I mean, the carpets were completely destroyed. There was cats everywhere. It smelled terrible. But we offered what they were asking pretty much, and we got the deal. And from there we went in and started renovating it. We pretty much, before we moved out of our parents, we pretty much started renovating the whole property. So with that being said, we did the carpets, we did new concrete in the garage, sidewalks, driveway, retextured the whole house, took down the popcorn ceilings, did a new swamp cooler, just pretty much top to bottom on this house. And we were there for about 2 years. And for that 2 years that I was there, we rented out the other 2 rooms in the house. So
how much were you getting for rent for those at the time?
So at the time, our mortgage was about, I think, $2,100, and we were renting out each room for about $700.
Okay,
$650 to $700. Yeah.
So you're $1,400 in rents, and then you and your brother were splitting the other $700 basically.
Yeah, we would take care of the utilities and water on that. So obviously, the lowest. I think we had 5 people in the house at one point in time because my brother split his room with his now fiance. I think the most I paid was $500-600. The least I paid a month was probably like $350-400 a month for my end of that house. So it was actually really easy on my bank account, and I was able to do things that I really, kind of wanted to do. So
when you bought it, you used 3% down, but did you do a down payment assistance program? Did you actually have to come up with the 3%?
So it was more of a down payment assistance program. We ended up paying out of our own pocket, I think, because we did not want to take care of closing costs or anything like that. So I think on that house, we were about $8,000 out of our own pocket between my brother and I. So realistically, it really wasn't that much. And it was very feasible for my brother and I because we didn't make a lot of money then.
Right.
I mean, we were making, between the both of us, I don't even think we both cleared $50,000 a year at that time.
So was it just you two, or did you have another cosign on the loan?
It was just us two.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were, but neither of you could have qualified individually.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So you qualified together. You guys co-signed on the loan together. You were total out of pocket of say $7,000 plus then your rehab costs or whatever.
Yeah, we were a little bit more into that. Yeah.
Okay. And so let's see. So we did $7,000 down payment. You had a $2,100 per month mortgage payment. You subsidized that by renting 2 of the rooms, right? Mm-hmm. And you had those 2 rooms rented for pretty much the whole time that you were there.
Absolutely, the whole time. We had somebody in there pretty much. We had somebody coming in and out. Somebody moved out. Somebody was coming in.
Okay. So that was in 2018.
Yes.
Okay. And then when did you move out of that property?
Oh man. So we were there. I was there for 2 years.
Okay.
I moved out 2020 going into 21.
Okay, perfect. So it's now been a rental, and I know your brother has moved out as well. So now it's a full-on rental, correct?
Yeah, it's a full-on rental. We've had one of our friends in that property who's been taking care of it and paying us monthly. We cash flow on that property right now roughly $350.
Okay. So, it's an interesting thing to think about because let's just run some quick numbers, right? First of all, we realized that, and I don't even want to call them sacrifices. It was just things that you had to go through in order to acquire this property. So the first and foremost was you had to get qualified for some type of down payment assistance. The second one is you couldn't do it on your own. So you found a way to do it. You found somebody that was willing to co-sign with you. Okay. It could have been a parent. In this case, it was your brother, right? Somebody else who had maybe similar goals to yours. Like, hey, let's go get a piece of real estate. You acquired the property for $350,000. How much would you say you put into it, like renovation wise?
Renovation off the bat, I think we were roughly closer to 20.
Okay. So you put $20,000 into the property. So let's even use that number, 20,000 plus the 7 you put in. So you're $27,000 into the property. You purchased it for $350 back in 2018. Super rough off the top of your head. What do you think that property's worth now?
Property, I mean, obviously with interest rates and stuff like that, the property value definitely went down in the last few months. But at the peak, I would say 520-ish.
Okay. So now maybe 475, 450, somewhere in there. Regardless, let's use the conservative number and go, let's call it even 450. So you've got $100,000 in increase in value for a $27,000 investment over a 4-year period, right? So we're looking at like 100% annualized return, and that doesn't count any cash flow that you had, okay, and it doesn't count any principal pay down. So principal pay down.
I also didn't mention, we got approved for $350, but we bought the house for $325.
Oh, you bought the house.
So I apologize. Yeah, so we bought the house for $325. That kind of changes the numbers a little bit.
So even better. So we
refinanced too on it. So.
Perfect. So we've got at least 100% annualized gain just on the return of the appreciation alone. Now, granted, one of the hottest, times of an appreciating market in Colorado that we've ever had. So, absolutely. But even cut those gains by if you cut that by 90%, you still get like a 10% annualized gain, which is pretty nice. Then we've got some cash flow on top of it. We've got principal pay down over that time. You've been able to refinance the property. Did you do a refinance in order to cash out or to lower your rate?
Lower the rate.
Okay.
So we were initially at a 4.25% rate on that house for about, I would say, a year. And then after that year, I had to pay down one of my debts that was outstanding, which It was a nightmare when we did refi, but now I think we're at like 3.25. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Cool. And that's a rate that you hang on to as long as you hold the property. You never want to get out of a rate like that. It's free money at this point. It's lower than inflation. It's incredible to be able to borrow at that. So, okay. So that's property number one. You borrow it, you co-sign with your brother. You get that one locked down. You grab some roommates. You're living in a property that you own for about $350 to $500 a month, versus at the time you could have been renting a room for $700 or renting an apartment for $1,200, $1,500, something like that. So right off the bat, you're not only are you making some money, but I think you're saving some money, because your alternative was, now let's say you didn't have the opportunity to live with parents and let's say not pay rent. Maybe you were paying rent to your parents, but you're not paying rent. Your alternative would be to pay rent or to pay rent to somebody else and live in a room. Regardless, you're living for $350 to $500 a month, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a phenomenal step number one. And that kind of takes me back to like my first property that I bought with my girlfriend at the time. Well, I bought it. My girlfriend lived with me, and we also had a roommate. We didn't need a roommate. Just like you and Zeph probably didn't need roommates, but you're like, man, why wouldn't we, right? Yeah. So back when I did mine back in 2010, 2011, I rented a room for $500 a month, and my mortgage was $900 a month, right? So between the two between Jess and I, we had a $400 a month payment. Now, could we have afforded the $900? Sure. But my mentality was, man, if I can take an extra $500 per month and I can sock that away, I can save $6,000 a year. If I can do that for 2 or 3 years, I've got another down payment. I've got another 5% down payment on a house, right? So let's fast forward a little bit. 2020, late 2020, early 2021, you go buy another house with your girlfriend at the time, now your wife.
Now my wife. Yeah.
Okay. And we're not going to talk a whole lot about that one, because that was just a house that you lived in. You guys moved in. We bought that house in a right before a really peaky market, but it was still
perfect time.
It was still
Winter
kind of
time.
Yep. It's still kind of a peak market. But what's your mortgage rate on that property?
2.25.
2.25.
Yeah, super low. Crazy
They
number.
have the award of the lowest mortgage rate of any of my clients ever. It was the perfect time to buy from a financing standpoint. So 2.25 on this property. And just very recently now, so they lived in that property for 2 years, and just this last December, bought another property that they moved into, and then now renting that second property. Okay. So the first one was done with his partner, which was his brother, was kind of a room house hacking type deal, has since turned that into a full-time rental property, and now has done the kind of typical lived with girlfriend, fiance, wife, now made the move and turned that into a rental property. So just a real quick synopsis of that property. What did you pay for that property? Do you remember?
The most recent one or the
last one?
The last one, $460.
No, sorry, the one before that, $330 or something.
So we bought that place for $340, and then it was pretty crazy because I think we were third in line for that property. So we put an offer in and got denied, but two people in front of us backed out, and we were able to get a phone call and if we still wanted it, and of course we did, and it was closing on that one at $340.
$340.
Yeah, $340. Our mortgage on that was about $1,800 a month.
Okay,
and we're now renting that property out for $2,350. So we're making about
we got $500 cash flow
on that house. Yeah,
same kind of thing. If I remember correctly, minimum down payment on that one when you guys bought it.
Yeah, because we used her first time home buyer.
Yep, and so I think she got down payment assistance on that one using hers, right? And
it was just it was whatever it was 3%.
Okay,
we did pay the 3%. Yeah,
you did not pay.
We did.
You did. Okay,
yeah, we split that. Yeah,
perfect. Okay, so again, another property where we're looking at maybe like $15,000 out of pocket this time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then the latest one is kind of how we're going to talk about this last move, right? So kept the prior house, bought this new one at what'd you buy it at?
We bought it at $485. $485.
Okay.
We had to put 5% down, and I think we owe $460 on the property right now.
Okay. So that one's the most recent one. We're renting the old one. We're cash flowing 500. So now you've got property number one, cash flowing 350-ish.
Yeah. And
you're splitting it with your brother.
Technically, yeah. But we're actually taking that money and putting it aside to do upgrades and stuff in the house.
So you're making 175, call it, per person per month there.
Which we could be making more on that property. I'll explain a little bit. That's where I messed up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll get back to that. And then on the second property, now you're cash flowing, 500 a month. And that one's full use. So you got basically 675 a month between the two properties. Now, granted, again, we should probably put away a couple $100 a month for incidentals, for taking care of repairs and things like that. But let me ask you this: the thing that people always, I get a lot of people that want to talk about like getting out there and creating cash flow. Like, I want to replace my income. I want to be able to quit my job, and that's all well and good. I think everybody wants to be able to do that. But is 675 minus maybe some expenses enough for you to quit your job?
No.
Is it life-changing money?
No.
Okay. So, but at this point, okay, we're talking. You've now acquired 3 properties since 2018.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 properties. You have a normal job. Okay. You don't make crazy money.
No.
Your wife doesn't make crazy money. Okay. Your brother doesn't make crazy money.
No.
You have an average income, but there's a couple things to take note of here. It's the sacrifices that we make that I don't even know that people like you and me necessarily see them as sacrifices because we see the bigger picture, right? But the big thing would be, this is the biggest one for me. With your most recent home purchase, okay, you bought something at $485. You could have bought something close to $600,000 if you would have sold your last house.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so you could have gotten a much nicer place in a nicer area, bigger, better finishes or whatever. So why didn't you do that?
So, there's a couple of reasons, obviously. Definitely something to the effect of having a property that I can have, for the future, right? And the longevity of even me retiring in the future, right? So that was kind of the idea of renting out the last property. And another reason is in the market that we're in right now with such a high interest rate, it's really hard to sell a property. And it's somewhat a little bit more easier for me to be able to just rent out that property and go into the next one and just sacrifice a little bit of, having a nicer house per se, right? Yeah. But it was definitely going to be easier for us to rent out that property than to sell it. We wouldn't even made that much money on that property. So in the long term, you're buying that property, and then the previous property, people are paying off that mortgage. And that's, that in 10, 15 years from now, the mortgage is going to be lower and the price of the property is going to be more. So my thought process is why don't we just hold on to that and be able to have something, for the long term, and maybe something that could be towards my retirement in 10, 15, 20 years,
Sure. And I think to summarize it too, the property that would have been sold again was acquired at $340. We probably would have been able to sell it at $400 to $415,000.
In the good part of the market, probably $480.
Yeah, in the good part before we took the pullback.
Yeah,
but still, so we would have taken a nice chunk of change. We would have been able to do $50,000, $60,000 down payment, and in addition to that, from a qualifying standpoint, you wouldn't have had to take on that debt because even though you had some offsetting income, it didn't completely offset, right? So it would have given you a little bit more buying power from that standpoint, and you would have been able to put down a bigger down payment, thus lowering your mortgage amount and giving you yet again more buying power. And so the idea here is that, and when I encourage people to say, hey, maybe keep the house that you're in and move up, but don't make such a big jump, because in reality, and let's forget even the first house, let's just talk about the second two. You've got this property that's worth $400,000. If you sell it and buy something at $600,000, now you've got $600,000 worth of assets, worth of leveraged assets with no cash flow. Or you can keep it at $400,000, buy something for $485,000 in your case, and now you've got $885,000 worth of leveraged assets and some cash flow.
Yeah.
And all you had to do was sacrifice maybe that extra bedroom, or maybe the quality that you could get eventually with renovations anyway, maybe a little bit of location. But I think if you have this mentality of building a portfolio overall, or building some type of legacy over a period of time, the other piece that you can also put in the back of your head is, this isn't like a lifetime sacrifice. This is a couple of years. We're going to be here for a couple of years.
And
okay?
then move.
And then we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
And we're going to move up, and then we're going to have the $600,000 property in the four, and in the meantime, all these properties are appreciating. Right. And so it's about having like a little bit of conservative mindset to go like, I know I could have that, and man, it would be really nice, but let's look down the road and decide, like, what is this really worth to me? Like, what is the opportunity cost for me? Like, one of the things I talk about a lot is opportunity cost. What is the opportunity cost of making a decision today to sell my house and buy something at the top of my price range? Well, for me, that opportunity cost is freedom later in life.
Mm-hmm.
It's financial freedom later in life, because if I sell that property, which to me would be a way to build my wealth, to increase my cash flow, if I get rid of that, I'm sacrificing down the road, right? And so for so many people, I think they're very short-sighted, and they're so used to having this, this short-term and really this desire for instant gratification, that we don't think about the long-term benefits of the choices that we make now, right? I think I was watching a video the other day, and it was something really simple. So some of the tax code allows like business owners to start paying their kids, right? And you can pay your kids tax-free up to like $12,000 a year.
$12,000,
right?
yeah.
So $12,000 a year. And if you were to take that $12,000, put it in their savings account, and then immediately open up a Roth IRA and put half of it, the $6,000 contribution limit, into their Roth IRA, starting when they're like 12 years old. I think the statistic was something like, if you did that for 10 years, okay, and then never touched it, by the time they were 65 years old, they would have $2.3 million on based on typical stock market returns. That's an incredibly powerful thought, right?
Absolutely.
And that is what it takes is you as a parent, for example, making that sacrifice of maybe $12,000 a year that you don't get to spend, that maybe instead of spending it on a big vacation, a big family vacation, you take that and you put it in the kids' account and then put it in the Roth IRA. Now, I know people are going to argue and say, well, yeah, but you're giving up memories. You're giving up that vacation that you could have had like with your kid. And I certainly understand that, but I think there's also a healthy balance. So if that's your argument, then say, well, how about 1 year you do a vacation and the next year you do the IRA, and then instead of retiring with $2.3 million, they retire with 1.1, right? But at least there's still something there. There's some long term there, and so I think that's the biggest thing to understand is like as I got to know Zach and his wife, there was this understanding that they were going to give something up. In fact, there was a time where we were talking and your wife really was thinking, hey, should we just sell this house so we can get what we want?
She was wanting to sell it the whole time.
She wanted to sell it.
And I was like, yo.
And luckily, I think we had a 2-to-1, where Zach was like, I don't want to sell it. And I was like, I really don't think you guys should sell it for two reasons. And this is coming from a real estate agent who gets paid to sell people's property, right? I'm talking about a selling too, because and especially in their case, not only because of the future value of the property and the rental income potential, but because of their secured debt at 2.25%.
Yeah.
Like that's something that's like intangible that you'll never be able to get again. And that low interest debt actually has a ton of value to it, especially as interest rates start to grow in the future. We may get back into things like we saw in the 80s and the 90s with wraparound mortgages and things where, you can sell the property on a second note and wrap it around your first mortgage and make a cash flow. And if they default, you just take the property back. Like you can be your own bank. There's some really cool financial opportunity that it opens up. So the ability just to keep the property at low leverage is incredibly powerful. And it's, I'm really proud of you guys taking those steps and just kind of holding back a little bit and being like, we could do 600, but, and I think that's the way that if people can really see that mentality, and I think the biggest thing is see that just like normal people with normal jobs can do this. Like so many people look out and they see all these rich and wealthy people acquiring a bunch of real estate.
you don't have to be that in order to make this happen.
No, you really don't. And that's what's crazy mindset for me and all the people that, think they can't get into a property, or like they don't think they can buy the house or whatever. If you have a W-2 job and you want to buy a house, go out there and get pre-approved. See what you get pre-approved for. You never know. Make sure you have a decent credit score. Make sure you take care of your financials so you don't have a whole lot of debt. And you should definitely be able to afford or be able to get into a property, rent out several rooms, so then you can lower your bills on your monthly payments or whatever it takes. Because sometimes, people just have this thought that they cannot get into a house or $400,000 house or $300,000 house. It's totally possible for anybody. My brother and I were perfect examples. I don't even think I was making $25,000 a year then. And that's poverty. That's not a lot of money. I was not making a lot. My brother wasn't even we were making about the same, 25 to 30 grand. And that combined was able to get us into a house, and we rented out the rooms, and it turned out pretty well for us. So,
and I think one of the other things to think about too is like the house that you're in now, right? The house that you're in now, the one you just moved into, would you say that's a nicer house than the first house that you bought?
Yes.
Sorry, when you bought it.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, right?
Absolutely.
So the idea is that was another sacrifice that you had to make, right? Like, I meet so many people that have these dreams of what they want their home to look like. But the unfortunate part, especially in Colorado, in a really strong market, you're not going to get what you want for your first home. No. Like you have to make sacrifices. And the only way to move up, right? Or to really move up. Obviously, Zach has proved differently. Zach went from, 325 to 340 to 465, all with keeping the prior property, which is incredibly impressive. Okay. The point being, had he sold each of those as he had gone, he could easily be in an $800,000 property right now. Easily. Okay. But what would he have given up for that? Again, he would have given up the $675 in cash flow, but he would have given up the fact that he now owns one for $485, one for that one's probably call it $415, so $900, and then the first property is worth probably $450 to $500,000 right now too. So you get you're looking at $1.3 million of the real estate. So you can either own $1.3 million in real estate with $675 in cash flow, or you can own $800 in real estate with zero cash flow, right? So again, the opportunity cost there of not moving up. But even if he had, right? Even if he had moved up and he decided, I'm going to sell these places and I'm going to get the nicest house I can buy. Again, the house he just bought is not something that he's necessarily buying as his first house. So many buyers come in and they don't understand that you got to start somewhere. And they go, well, if I can't get this, I'm not going to get anything. And my message to them is get something. Start with something. Start with a home that has cats running around in it and it just smells like cat pee, and it needs all new carpet, and it's got foundational issues, and it's got it needs paint, and it needs start with something like that, or start with a condo, or start with a small townhome. I know you want 3 bedrooms, but if you can't afford it, the problem is you can never outsave the market. So if you sit around and go, well, I'm going to save until I can afford to get to that next level, you can't do it, because Colorado, for example, is such a hugely appreciating market that it will far surpass your ability to save and get to that next level. So you've got to get into something, take advantage of the appreciation that this market brings, and then you can sell it, take that money and move it into that next piece, right? Like that's why no one, other than maybe some, athletes, trust fund babies, like the top echelon of percentages, no one buys $1 million home for their first home.
No
one. No, it doesn't matter like how good of your first home is going to be a starter home. And the thing is what you'll realize is that starter home, like when you bought your first home, right? What would you say percentage wise? Put a percentage on it. How much of a percent was it of what you wanted?
Like
after it was renovated.
After it was, it was definitely something I wanted at the time. It was nice. It came out really nice. Yeah.
Like 80%?
Yeah, at least.
Sure.
If that. I mean,
So-
it was so surprising to see what the house looked like after I did the renovation, because it was so much more comfortable to live in. And then you see the vision of, okay, now this is something I want to be in, right?
Sure.
So it was really cool.
Well, and I think like my third house, for example, if I would have seen that house when I was looking for my first house, it would have been a dream home, like an absolute, oh my gosh, if I could buy this house, like this house would be the best house I could ever own. It's 100% of what I wanted, but I never would have been able to afford it, right? That was my third house. Now my third house isn't even 80%. That's why I moved out of it, right? I'm in my fourth house. My point is, as you go up, you will never get 100% of what you want, because as your income goes up and as your expectations go up, right? Like you will be like, people like look at what I live in. I have a big garage, and people are like, oh my God, like that's a dream garage, right? Like I can fit 7 cars in my garage, right? Well, now I'm like, if I could fit 9 or 10, I'd prefer that, right? And so like,
I'm trying to shoot above you on your garage.
Like where you build up, you're always going to find that you're never going to get exactly what you want, because you're hopefully, if have any drive or you have any passion to be more successful in life, you will have goals that are above and beyond what you've already accomplished, right? And so things that may be so far out of reach, right? I think I can't remember. I think there's an acronym, but it's called like a big, hairy, audacious goal or something like that. I think that's the safe for work version of it. But the idea is like, pick a goal that's so far away. So like, for example, Gary Vee is very famous for having one of those goals to own the Jets. We actually talked about that in a prior podcast, but he has a goal to own the Jets. Gary Vee isn't even close to owning the Jets. Okay. Gary Vee is worth like $100 million, $150 million probably, right? Not even close to owning the Jets, but does he have the type of drive to get
Absolutely.
there? 100% he does, right? And so the idea is like, things that you never realized were possible, you start getting close to being to being able to accomplish those things, and then your dreams change, right? Like you would never think, like for example, Zach, you may never think, like when you bought your first house, you would never even fathom, having a property maybe with like a 10-car garage. You'd just be like, I might have an open field where I can park garages. And then at some point in your life, you're going to have a property with a 10-car garage. And then all of a sudden, like a property with a helicopter pad isn't going to be all that far out of reach. And then your goals will change. You never realized you wanted a helicopter, and maybe you still don't want a helicopter, but to be able to have a property with a helicopter pad on it would be pretty cool.
It would be pretty cool.
And so what happens is, we all know that the people that own houses that have helicopter pads, that was not their first ever home, right? Like that was something that they built up to get to. And the majority of the time they've built that through, one property to the next, to the next, to the next, unless they, hit big in the tech sector or something like that. But they're building up property. And that's why we see legacy properties. We see people that inherit somebody that, bought a property in Aspen 30 years ago, and then passed away and left it to their kids. And now they've got this $10-20 million piece of real estate, and they can just roll it into something else. Right. So anyway, I feel like I probably got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but one of the things I wanted to talk about those properties, anytime that we go through a process like this, it's always a learning process. So, tell us a little bit about some pitfalls maybe that you ran into, things that you would have done differently, that you still wish you would do differently right now, that type of stuff. So
definitely. So let's go back to the first property that I own with my brother. We have a great relationship. We have no issues with how we run that property. I run the property though. I take care of the tenants. I take care of all that stuff. So, I guess one of the things, as we slowly moved out of that house, I moved out and then my brother moved out, and we had multiple roommates in there. I was including their, and I shouldn't have ever done this, but I was including in their rent the utilities and water. And that obviously has changed over a period of the year. It might be more expensive or less expensive. So what does that cut into? That cuts into my cash flow. So, for example, we have somebody in right now, and he's been great. There's been no issues, but in reality, I still he was living there with a couple of other people, and one person wasn't necessarily the greatest roommate, but that situation got handled. He moved out, but I'm still doing that right now until his lease is up. I'll be changing it, but we're taking care of the utilities and water on it still, and that's really the difference of an extra $200-300 cash flow a month. So on that property, yeah, I'm making $350 cash flow each month, but that's, if I was actually charged for the utilities, which most people do,
yep.
I would be making an extra $250-300 a month.
Plus, when you're paying for the utilities, the tenant has zero regard for saving water, saving electricity, that kind of stuff. In the winter, they've got the heat set to 75. In the summer, it's set to 65.
Yeah.
And so they leave the water running all the time. I've got a tenant. I don't understand how it's possible, but in the winter months, and I've talked to them multiple times, I said, check for leaks. You guys have to have a leak, because I get a copy of their water bill. During the winter months, they're using between 16 and 18,000 gallons of water.
No.
I have a family of 4. We use, in the winter months, we go through between 2,000 and 3,000 gallons per month, right? And so I don't understand. And I think they have 4 to 6 people living there. I think that's how many. I think they have 4 kids. But regardless, that's more water than I use in the summer months when I have my irrigation system on. And I've told them, you got to have a leak. There's got to, and they're like, no, nothing's leaking. So I don't know if they just take hour-long showers each every day and leave the water running constantly and do hundreds of loads of laundry, but I don't understand it. But what happens is luckily they're paying for those utilities, but yeah, I would agree. Always have the tenants pay for utilities, definitely. Even if you have to adjust your rent down, because then they get to determine how much they're going to spend on those utilities, not stick you with turn the AC down all the way to 65 in the summer and stick you with the bill.
Well, and that's the thing, though, is he's been really good with it, but obviously with Excel and the utilities in the winter months now in Colorado, that everything is pretty much, I would say, doubled. I had to go in and it wasn't that much, but I had to go in and pretty much average out the monthly bills through Excel so that I can keep my profit margin still pretty reasonable. Because, sure. It went from, $130 a month roughly to $275 in the winter months to it's probably now closer to $350, $400, which my property is the same size. And I just averaged it out on Excel, so now I'm paying $160. So I had to just bite the bullet on that. But after we changed the lease, definitely that's something that I have learned to make sure that the tenant takes care of, not me. It really will cut into my cash flow, and it should help out quite a bit. So,
what else? Any other pitfalls that you've run into? Any issues renting the property? Any things that any advice that you'd give for people?
I would say just have everybody sign one lease and just make it one payment. Yes, it was really nice that we had other people, renting out each room, but that had, implications of, one person having one lease, another person having a lease. So there's just too many leases. I would say just have one lease, have everybody sign that lease, and obviously make sure they take care of utilities. I would say that's it. If you guys are moving into a house and you do something like my brother and I did, obviously you're going to have people renting out each room. But when you move out and when you start going on your own and you rent out the house, I would say rent it out to one family or one person that can just pay whatever it is you guys are asking and just have one lease being signed.
Yeah,
that would definitely be one of the things.
I would definitely agree with that. Anytime I have multiple roommates, they're all on one lease. And so if one roommate leaves, I don't lose rent. The other two have to pick it up. So if it's $2,100 a month and there's 3 roommates paying $700 each, I don't care if one of them leaves. The lease is for 2,100, and then they need to figure out themselves if they're removing someone off of the lease or putting someone back on. It doesn't matter. I'm getting my 2,100. Yeah. If you're doing individual leases and someone leaves, now you've got to try to fill a room. A room is harder to fill than the actual whole property. So there's so much to be said, with making sure that you've got everything on one lease. You definitely should, have them pay for their own utilities. Yeah. Like I said, again, even if you have to reduce the rent in order to say, hey, you also have to pay utilities, I would much rather do that than try to build it in. Yeah. And some people try to build it in thinking they're going to make a profit. You're not going to make a profit because they're going to abuse the utilities. I promise. Anytime a tenant is not if you go into somebody's apartment building where all the utilities are paid, just watch. You'll walk in the winter and it'll be like super hot in their apartment building because they don't care about putting their heat up to 75, 80 degrees because they're not paying for it. Okay. So you go into somebody who's paying for it, it'll be 62 degrees in the winter and they'll be bring a coat because I don't use my heat. Right. Yep. So those are some of the things. And also just as a reminder, if you go to our website, if you go to www.blackyettigroup.com, go to the resources tab, the free resource guide that you can download on that has advice like this in it. So that full resource guide talks to you about how to rent the property, how to stage it, ideas leases, other addendums that you can put in your lease, and just things that you can, piece of advice, only sign one lease. Piece of advice, when you're showing the property, don't drive over and try to show the property individually to 10 different people. Hold an open house style, because you're going to have half your people aren't going to show up, and then you're going to drive to that property. They're going to no show you. There's going to be a lot of different stuff in that. So there's that guide that goes through all of that stuff that kind of teaches you these things so that you can avoid some of the mistakes and some of the pitfalls that we've run into in our process. And so, but overall, if I had to put a letter grade on Zach's process, he's up in the A- B+ category, right?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
He's done a phenomenal job because, one of the things that we see, I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that I think the biggest mistakes that I made, quote unquote mistakes that I made through my house hacking process, I wouldn't give myself that grade. I would give myself maybe a C. And that was because looking back on the process, there's one big thing I would have changed. And that was every time I bought a property, I put 20% down because I learned that PMI was the devil, and that it was just taking your money.
I hate PMI, but yes.
We all hate PMI, but
I'm with you on that, yeah.
But if you, first of all, if you have good credit, it's really not that expensive, right? And it's not, and if it's, it was keeping me from buying a home. So it was it would have been, for me, that MI would have probably cost me $30-$40 a month. And it kept me from buying a home until I could save $20,000 more to have a down payment. In the meantime, I could have bought a property 2-3 years earlier for 3%, 5% down.
Financed and got,
and refinanced it out in a couple of years, right? And so even if it didn't appreciate like the Colorado market did, and I couldn't refinance out the MI that quickly, who cares? The MI is like $40 a month, and within a couple of years moving out, I'm not even paying for it anymore anyway. All it's doing is affecting my cash flow. So I would have given up $40 a month, but I would have kept 30-40 grand in my pocket, and that 30-40 grand would have put me closer to that next purchase. And so that's one of the big things that I would have changed. And that's where, Zach and his wife are on a great trajectory, because like I said, they're at number 3 in the last 4 years, right? In the last 5
30,
years.
So.
Right. So
I'm still pretty young.
So if every 2 years you can, and I think 2 years is very reasonable. If every 2 years you can be smart, save your cash flow, save a little bit of your income so that you have another $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 down payment, right? In 2 years, 3 years, whatever it may be, then you can keep this property too, and you acquire another one. Now you got $1.9 million worth of real estate. Then you have 2 million, 2.5, 3.5. And we've talked about in one of our previous episodes, but once you get to like 5 million in property, there's so many things that you can do just with the fact that that property is going to appreciate $150,000 to $250,000 per year, right? $5 million worth of real estate is going to appreciate that much. You can borrow on that and live on that for the rest of your life. Yeah. So, you just get $5 million worth of property, which I think is very realistic for you specifically to acquire $5 million worth of real estate with no outside help by the time you're 40 years old, right? Because all these properties that you have so far, okay, the $1.3 million in property that you have so far, those already are appreciating at $75,000 a year. So for the next 10 years, okay, at $75,000 a year, there's $750,000 right there.
Yeah.
So if you never do another thing, in 10 years, you have $2 million worth of real estate. In the meantime, if you pick up another $2 million worth of real estate in the next 10 years, which is easy to do, you picked up $1 million in your first 4 years. And I can tell you now that you've picked up those first couple, now it's the snowball effect.
Yeah.
Because that first property, that one's going to fall off. You're going to get full credit for that. That's not going to hurt your debt to income ratio anymore. And 2 years from now, the one you just did, that one's not going to hurt your debt to income ratio anymore. And all that's ever going to hurt your DTI is your exiting property. That's it. Your departing property is the only one that's going to negatively affect your DTI. So you keep working to increase your pay so you can put a little bit more money away, increase your qualifying power, and just being a little bit conservative on your move ups. You'd be 40 years old, own $5 million worth of real estate or more. You might be more aggressive. Some people are, significantly more aggressive than that. But I mean, it's a really incredible process, and you're doing it the right way with the minimum down payments and letting the tenants pay those extra costs.
Yep.
And then if you get a refi opportunity, you refi. So last little piece here. If there was something that you could just like basically a tidbit of advice on what you think maybe the key is to being successful in this. We talked about some different things to be successful. What do you think is the most important piece of being successful, other than having like a really good real estate agent mentor? Of course.
I would say, look at your 9 to 5 and look at other opportunities that come up. There's tons of opportunities out there. Somebody selling a house, friends, business partners, there's always money to be made out there. And I would say, just keep your eyes open for that, because, that little thing that you might come up with and make an extra $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 outside of your 9 to 5 could really project you into getting into your new property, right? I am an entrepreneur. I own my own business. So, I'm always looking at, how am I going to make my next dollar, right? I have to wake up and I have to go make money to provide for my wife and my family. So keep your options open with your business partners and people around you, because you never know what opportunity might present itself. That's one of them. And then I would say another one is like just save up some cash. You can actually use your 401k or your IRA to get into your first property.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Live Big podcast. For even more real estate and investment resources, go to blackyetigroup.com/resources and download Nick's complete guide to running your own rental properties. Tune back in next week for another episode, and until then, live big.
Live Big does not provide investment, legal, or tax advice, and nothing herein should be construed as being financial, legal, tax, or other advice. Live Big does not represent that any securities or services discussed are suitable for any investor. No investment or other decision should be made solely based on the contents or information found on the website or podcast. When making a decision about your investments, you should seek the advice of a professional financial advisor or qualified expert.